And he flat out asked me, he said, can I win the Olympia? Like, can I win the Olympia right now? Like, knowing where I'm at right now, can I win the Olympia? And I said, yes, we can get it done right now, but I'm going to tell you, we got no room for error. And if we go any longer, no.
Hey everybody, welcome to It's Just Bodybuilding, episode 111. Special guest today, Chad Nicholls, the Diet Doc. Of course, Dusty Hanshaw, Scott McNally, and myself. Welcome to It's Just Bodybuilding.
Hey man, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Before we get going, I got to tell everyone to like, share, subscribe, comment.
Ring the bell.
There you
Push
go.
the button.
And yeah, push the algorithm. So, Chad, are you rested up?
I did, man. I don't know if you've seen the story, but I was sick all year. And so the first trip that I'd actually taken anywhere, left the house basically, was to the Olympia. And so it was, a little bit stressful, obviously, going into the Olympia this year. We'll kind of talk about that. But, when I got home, I was just like burnt. All I wanted to do is just kind of chill out and, just kind of hang out, watch some Friday Night Lights with the boys, and that's it. And so, I'm recovered a little bit now, so I'm good to talk.
Yeah. So do you want to get into that? Just start with that?
Whatever, man. We can talk with.
Yeah, because I'm actually not fully aware of what you're. You're kind of a keep the cards close to the chest type of guy, so I'm not really fully aware of what your year in was made of.
It was crazy because we kept it really under wraps because I'm not one of these guys like, oh my God, everybody, I need like a prayer chain and all this type of shit, right? It's kind of a weird scenario. I started getting sick at the beginning of the year. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker. And like everybody, I thought like, fuck, this has got to have something to do with COVID because I'd had COVID at the beginning of the year. And I'm Googling everything. And, everything, makes it look like it's like this COVID long hauler thing that's going on, So I'm like, fuck, this is great, right? But what ended up happening was, I'll give you the short version of it. I got bit by a brown recluse spider 2.5 years ago.
Dude.
And so it ended up eating up like a hole about like that in my stomach. Because they just basically eat up your skin, basically. And so I got over that. And about a month and a half later, the venom spread with staph infection, which at this point had turned to MRSA. So it started on my left side, spread to right side. And I had these like little places open up on my right side, 21 of them. So right now, like they're all healed now, but I look like I've been shot by like a fucking, Gatling gun or some shit. And so they just started opening up, had 21 spots, and so they're treating all that, cutting out all the, dead tissue. At the same time, I'm dealing with a back injury. I was training actually pretty hard at the time. And I thought it was just a back injury. I was going to my chiropractor. He's doing everything possible, acupuncture, like all these kind of, things. And it kind of goes away. I don't really put the two and two together because at no point do I think the back injury has anything to do with the spider bite thing. Fast forward to beginning of the year, this kind of injury had just kind of kept kind of raising its head back and forth. I end up with, the back injury again, and I use a Theragun on it. Mm-hmm. And up being was a ulcerated infection that had built a rind around the infection, encapsulated it on T1, 2, and 3.
Damn.
So it built a big rind and basically had been eroding everything in my spine for 2.5 years. I use a Theragun, blow it up into my neck, head, chest, everything. And then over the next basically 2.5 months, the infection just spreads until basically I went to the doctor twice. I went to the doctor because my throat had swollen up so much that I could hardly breathe. It was like breathing issues and everything, which at the point that, I thought was COVID. and
Right.
because of breathing issues involved. And so I go there, my throat is swollen. They originally think it's strep throat, but I knew it was strep because I've had strep before. So they thought maybe it was like some tonsil infection or something like this. And they give me this very strong antibiotic, which basically saved my life probably, because that was a Wednesday. By Sunday night, I was starting to get super, super sick. I was in and out of consciousness, kind of. Of course, I'm an idiot and won't go to the hospital. I tell my wife, don't call an ambulance unless I'm basically unconscious. I had a temperature of 104 to 105.6 for almost 7 hours. And like, I've never done acid, but I'm guessing it was exactly like this. Like, I felt like a video game, like tripping out. Like, it was the craziest shit ever. Monday morning, I go to my doctor, and he basically immediately is like, we're going to call an ambulance, and I'm like, oh, no, because the hospital's right across the street. And I go, I'll just go. And they're like, listen, we're going to call ahead. They'll be right there. Go to the emergency room, Like, you got to go right now. So we pull out of the driveway, and I head home. My wife's like, what in the fuck are you doing? And I go, listen, they're going to admit me into the hospital. And I said, there's no telling how long I'll be here. And I said, with COVID, I said, my kids ain't going to be able to come up here. I said, we got to go home and talk to the kids. I go, I may not ever see them again. Like, I may fucking die in the hospital. I don't know.
Right.
And, so I go home, talk to the kids, tell them what's going on. We go, and when we pull up, they're like right there. And the nurse is like, where have you been? And in the meantime, my doctor had called, because I didn't go to the hospital. And he's like, where are you at? And I'm like, we had to go talk to the kids, because I didn't know how, if I'm going to make it out of the hospital. I didn't think they'd be able, to see me. And he's like, listen, you got to get to the hospital. So I get there. Basically, they hook me up, start checking me in. I'm in congestive heart failure. One of my lungs is seized up because the mass in my chest was so big. It had basically put pressure against my heart, but also it collapsed one of my lungs. My kidney and liver both completely shut down. I'm in sepsis, and they think I've been there basically since Wednesday when I had went to the doctor. So I've been in sepsis for basically a week almost. But they gave me this antibiotic, which and in conjunction with the fact that I'd had this infection in my body for 2.5 years, I had kind of been able to kind of adapt. And so they think that's literally what kept me alive. In intensive care for basically 2 weeks, just basically zoned out on, antibiotics, intravenous antibiotics. I then basically end up going home, and I'm on antibiotics, intravenous antibiotics, on and off, because the infection becomes resistant to it. So they have to keep switching it. So I was on antibiotics from basically March until 2 weeks before the Olympia, the whole year. And just recently, about a week ago, I got my blood run from that, from coming off the antibiotics. Infection numbers are all down. Everything's, back to normal. So I guess I'm going to live. But it was freaky for a while. I mean, there was a point for 3 months I went to bed. I was like, am I going to wake up? And I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, shit, another day. Like,
so
that's wild.
This was all from the spider bite.
Fucking spider bite. It's yeah. And now I'm dealing with, you got to realize it was basically on my spine for 2.5 years. So I have osteomyelitis, which basically just deteriorates the spine. It basically just eroded everything away. So, the bone, the disc, the nerves, everything is basically just corroded away for 2.5 years. So right now, basically what I'm dealing with is like just excruciating pain. So now I've got to go to a neurologist and, find out what they can do with it. But it's going to be chronic because it is what it is. Like, there's no fixing it. It's just basically surgery to, fix whatever they possibly can, how damaged it is, as far as that goes.
So at what point did, because they think it's COVID related, they don't know what's going on. At what point does the spider bite come up again?
So it doesn't come up until I'm in the hospital and they're trying to figure out where the infection is. And I'm like, I said, my pain is in my back. That's where my pain is. And so, they run like test after test after test. Like I've had my entire body tested, basically. Heart, like 4 or 5 different times. Brain, like my whole body's been scanned, 4 or 5 different times. But they scan a complete scan of my spine up into, cervical, into basically, brain, everything. And they find this basically infection on my spine. And then we start breaking it down. And I'm like, well, listen, I've had this pain in my back for 2.5 years. And then I said it was from, this, spider bite, which turned to MRSA. And they're like, well, what's on the spine is MRSA. And then they're like, what it is it's basically built a rind. And it's been there for 2.5 years, and somehow it got blown apart. And I'm like, well, I've been using a Theragun on my spine, and they're like, well, that's what blew it apart. Like you blew it basically everywhere, So
that's an advertisement that Theraguns definitely,
definitely.
I don't think they're going to give you a free one for this ad.
Yeah, but it was the weirdest thing. Like, at no point did I think like, any of this shit was related to the spider bite. I figured, I just like anything, I pulled something in my back and it's just been kind of nagging for the last 2 years. And it wasn't something that was there all the time. Like it would nag for a little bit and go away, nag for a little bit and go away. And, so I just go to my chiropractor and, he'd work on me and it would kind of go away. And then, 3 or 4 months later, it would come back and I go to the chiropractor and he would work on me a little bit. And he's like, man, this, you can feel it every time you come in. It's knotted up, blah, 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 blah. And, it's, it was basically because, like, it was just infected. So.
That's wild.
So
weird.
So you definitely kept that under wraps, man. I had no idea that all that went on, right up to the O.
Just kind of out of it, I was still, working with some athletes. The game plan at the beginning of the year was to take on like a full team. And luckily I hadn't done that. I'd only kept a few. And so, I was lucky enough to be able to, do that. But yeah, I was basically out of it the whole year. I was at home. Once I got over everything kind of, then I'm dealing with the infection, but we couldn't kill the infection. That was the thing. So antibiotics were so strong. Most of them, it's a couple points I was basically on infusions. So I would literally go into the hospital and sit in an infusion lab. So I'm basically in there with people that are dealing with, cancer and stuff. And I'm basically in the chair, pumping antibiotics into me. And after that, you're just literally wiped out for, 3 or 4, like you're just wiped out. And all year, like you're just beat up. So.
Man, so did winning another Olympia with Ramy pump a little bit of energy back into your year?
It did for sure, and that's a whole nother story because, a lot of people don't realize, the whole story with Ramy. And it's, it's kind of come out. I've talked about it a little bit, but, Ramy had some things that he was dealing with at the beginning of the year. He got pulled 15 different ways, obviously, after winning the Olympia last year.
Right.
And so, Egypt was going crazy and they literally was, just pulling him 1,000 different ways. He was doing interviews and all great stuff, like, all absolutely amazing things. But during this time, he had some personal issues, family things that he had to deal with. There were just some things that he had to, to deal with. And so this took a toll on him. And it was, he went, he was a little bit depressed and went through some things like, people do. Sometimes things get in the way and sometimes you got to deal with those things. And so throughout the year, it was just one of those things that's what he was having to kind of deal with. And we weren't able to kind of do the things that we were wanting to do really for this Olympia. And it got to a point around June and, he literally had, not trained. And when I say not trained, like, he probably went into the gym 5 or 6 times during, that span of like 6 or 7 months, trying to like remotivate himself, like get to that spot to, go. And he just couldn't. Like he was just in this thing where he just, wasn't the same Ramy. And so finally we got to a point, and I said, listen, and very few people knew about this. Like, his closest friend knew, and then me and Dennis knew. And finally I got to a point, and we had a long sit down, and I said, listen, man, we're running out of time. Like, we are running out of time. And he flat out asked me, he said, can I win the Olympia? Like, can I win the Olympia right now? Like, knowing where I'm at right now, can I win the Olympia? And I said, yes, we can get it done right now, but I'm going to tell you, we got no room for error, and if we go any longer, no. And, he even said, he's like, listen, at some point, if you don't think we can win, be honest with me, So there was a point where it was literally maybe up in the air a little bit, like, like it wasn't going to happen. But he is such a freak. His body just responds so ridiculous. And it was just boom, boom, boom once he got in that groove. And then once he got into that groove, then it became this motivation that he had to do this and prove that he could do this for him. Like this became about Ramy now. And it became a driving force that he has to do this for himself. He has to be able to go through this process again and prove to himself that he has this in him. And I told him, I said, man, you thought the diet was tough last year. Like, we are now trying to accomplish something this year and achieve a look that is very tough to achieve because we haven't been in the gym for 7 months. And that is a different look. When you don't have that, it's something different. So we're now trying to create something that we don't have. And, it made it tough. It made it a lot more tricky going into the Olympia.
Do you? I know you're a man who loves your percentages. So like exactly. At like say a month out from the Olympia, what % do you think Ramy was? Like, how uphill was this?
So at a month out, we were starting to cruise. So at a month out, we were cruising. And, we were – so here's the thing. He was actually leaner, body fat-wise, this year than he was last year. So we were actually a little bit ahead of the game. But what we're trying to achieve is this dense look to the muscle, which is time in the gym. Okay? That's what we missed this year. Okay? And that's virtually impossible to replicate, obviously, with, it just is. And so I knew conditioning-wise we were there. Like, I knew where we were going to be. But we were having to push into this kind of trying to achieve something that, we didn't have. And so we're trying to replicate time in the gym by conditioning and low body fat levels and dryness and all of this. And it became tricky, at 4 weeks out, I thought, we're going to be 90%, I think, and if we can dry out, we're going to push into that 95 range. And, in my opinion, that was going to be enough. Like, I knew who was in there. I knew where we were at. I felt like we could get it done this year. I felt like we could get it done. Wow. And there was a point where, Ramy was like, listen, at any point, if you do not think we can win, I don't want to walk on stage. Like, if at any you think like, listen, this is an uphill battle. We're not going to make it. He's like, you got to be honest with me. You got to tell me, we're not going to make it. And he goes, we will regroup, But in my heart, I felt like we couldn't do it. Like, we had to, like, I felt like I had to accomplish this because number 2 is a really tough one. Like, if you don't get number 2, number 3 becomes that much harder. And, or the following year wouldn't be number 3, but right. That one becomes that much harder to grab. No. And so I knew, like, we got to get it done this year. We got to make sure that we accomplish this. And luckily we were able to get it done.
As a coach, when you're dealing with athletes, especially somebody as good as Ramy, and let's be honest, when you're looking, if you can't be number 1 in the world, you don't want to do it kind of mindset. How much of your posting and pressing that we were going to see something ridiculously special was to help his mindset also, because you know how that works. Like, it's one thing even if you did believe it, but you need the athlete to believe it. So how was that?
I mean, there's a point, especially, going through what he went through this year and being kind of, down a little bit and stuff. So you've got to like take him to a place where he believes in himself. And, that was one of the things, that we had to get to. And my main concern was, getting him to that point where he was able to just, I guess mentally walk into the gym and have that fire back, like believe in himself, know that he can get that done. And so there was a lot of points where I was like, I knew like that June, July part was like, that part was tricky because we had a lot of ground to make up, and he made it up very fast. He made it up very quickly. And so when we got beyond that point, when we started getting into August and deep into August, I knew like, okay, like the body's starting to click away. And you can tell based off of how he feels too, because at the beginning stages, like when he sends me the photos and stuff, I can see it in his face. He's unsure. Like he's unsure of himself. He knew things were coming around, but it wasn't the old Ramy. And then when we got into August, you started to see him believing, the smile starting to come back on his face, like the energy starting to come alive in his face. At that point, I knew like, okay, we have at least a very good version of Ramy in the gym. He's getting the work done. He's clicking through everything. Can we like deliver on this like ridiculous, version of what I want to see from Ramy? No, but can we get him relatively close to last year and retain the title? That's where, I knew. I said, listen, man, we're going to have to dig deep. We're going to have to push super, super hard diet-wise, because that's how we're going to achieve this like kind of graininess and detail that we need that, we're lacking a little bit in the gym. And I said, you're going to have to suffer. And that's when I told him, I'm like, man, we got to get you to Dennis's so he can just put you through the ropes, just push you as hard as we possibly, can push you. And that's what, we ended up doing. We got him out there a little bit earlier. And everything worked out.
Can you tell us about your, not just Ramy's relationship, but your relationship with Dennis when it comes to the type of teamwork that you guys have collaborated on, and how you communicate, and what he expects of you and what you expect of him when it comes to handling a guy like Ramy?
Right. So me and Dennis work out really well together because I trained Dennis. So I worked with him for so many years. And so he
you were responsible for all those Thailand photos.
Yeah. Like t-shirt gym shots, right? But we click really well together. We've known each other for years. He kind of knows my process. I know his, process as far as training and all those types of things. So it works out nice because, I'll send the diet over to Ramy, and then I immediately send it to Dennis. Then, and then, he was staying at Dennis's house. So Dennis's wife is literally prepping the food. So everything is prepped. So I know like 100%, like he ain't getting, if it ain't on the paper, like he ain't getting it. Like it's, it ain't happening. But the good thing is like we can communicate, because I can call Dennis and be like, hey man, how's he doing in the gym? Like where's his energy level? Like how's he doing and stuff? And, there was a couple changes that I made because I felt like we needed to like really pick things up. So I made kind of some, like changes, like a little bit radical in the diet and stuff. And I said, like, how is this working out? He's like, man, I noticed a big crash, with his energy levels and stuff this week. So then I'll immediately like alter the diet a little bit, make it a little more steady, and just kind of moving things around and stuff. A couple days later, I'm like, how is this? He's like, 100 times better. Like, yeah, I can see it, energy wise. I can see it as far as like, how he's responding. So we like click really, really well, because, I can see how things are going, with him, and as to, like energy, how he trains, like those types of things. And then Dennis, he has a good eye as well. So, I'll call him and be like, listen, from the photos, this is what I'm seeing. what are you thinking? And he, most of the time he's like, yeah, that's exactly, where we're at. I agree 100%. So it's one of those things where, we know exactly where things are at. And there's, there was a couple points where, I was like, listen, man, like, we got to bump this up. Like, we got to take this to the next level. So I said, whatever you're doing, go beyond that. I said, because we need a greater calorie burn in the gym. We need we need to push this because we have so much ground that we need to make up. We got to push it. And I said, I know Ramy is fighting back a little bit because he was in a kind of a dark spot at that point. Because again, like, we got to those places a little bit earlier than we did last year. And so, to Ramy, he's like, fuck, I'm already here. And it's like 3 weeks earlier than it was last year. And, I'm asking for more. I'm wanting more now. And I need him to be, pushed harder in the gym. I need him pushed, more with the posing, and so Dennis understands that and has a way of being able to, kind of work through that, keep him motivated. And, there was points where, Dennis was like, yeah, man, he was just kind of, in this spot. So we just got in the car and fucking drove around and, kind of, settled him down a little bit. And, next thing I know, he's snoring in the car and, and then we go back home and, on our way. So, I mean, it's a good working relationship for sure. And Dennis is old school, so he's not that guy that's like everything's, he's not a cheerleader. Like, he's the type of guy like, listen, I understand it's fucking hard. I understand you feel like shit, but unfortunately, Chad needs you to push a little bit fucking harder. So we're going to have to find another gear and fucking, go. And that's what they do,
I think this is like a huge bonus for guys to watch this, because we all know, working with athletes that don't have a Dennis, that you are, they're tired and backing down. And you're like, actually, I need you to kick it up further. And I don't really give a shit that you're tired. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's good to hear that the best guys have that, because that's, I think, where it gets confused is a lot of guys think these guys are so genetically elite that they don't have to work. And it's like, well, listen to this. Yeah, he's elite and he still has to kill himself.
Yeah. And here's the thing, people think that, but it's like, look, if you're at this level, fucking everybody is elite. I mean, to an extent, like, they're all spectacular. Sure. They're all, at the end of the day, it's literally the person who wants it the most. And I tell everybody, and this is one of the conversations I almost always have with my athletes. I'm like, listen, the diet's going to be like one of the hardest fucking things that you've ever went through. And I said, your brain is going to question why the fuck you're doing things. It is. Like, there's no doubt. And there's going to be a point where it tries to convince you that you don't need to train that hard, or you need a break because you're overtrained, or this and that. Like, very few people ever fucking overtrain. You know what I mean? Very few people are fucking starving based off of a bodybuilder's diet. You know what I mean? Like, even if they were just at the extreme low, it's still a ridiculous amount of food. And, but the brain will tell you, like, oh shit, like, we need more. We need more. I'm running on empty type of thing. And it takes a really unique human being that is willing to suffer and torture themselves every single day and go through that. You know what I mean? And to me, those are the people that emerge on the other side as the fucking elite, the Ronnie Colemans and the Jay Cutlers and, those guys, it's those guys that emerge out of that hole, out of that fucking tunnel of death that, show up and look fucking some way that most people just don't understand.
Hell yeah.
So, Chad, your audio is awesome. Your picture's a little choppy. So do you want to just hang up and reconnect?
I know.
We can just do it.
I can't, because I'm watching this down here and it's good, and this one up here is like frozen. I'm like that.
Right. Yeah, just kind of hang up and then just re-enter the room.
True Nutrition has supported our programming now for a number of years, and I'm super grateful for it because they believe in us and I believe in them. I'm sure you guys have heard of Dante Trudell. We talk about him on the shows. He had a vision of offering high-quality, third-party tested supplements at a fair price. They have a ton of different protein powders, just about every type you could think of, literally thousands of flavor combinations. Hit me up if you're interested in suggestions. They offer health supplements. I use their collagen and their fish oil. And of course, they offer performance supplements. You can get bulk EAA powder or beta-alanine. You can also get finished products like the Mountain Dog Perry MD Intra Workout. If you shop with True Nutrition and you use our code THINK, you'll get some additional savings, you'll get high-quality supplements, and you will support our programming. You can also help to support the shows through Patreon. I appreciate everybody who's made a contribution. You guys are helping to keep me pumping these podcasts out. I have links to everything in the description. Check them out. Let me know what you think, and let's get back to the program.
So, when it comes to the stuff that you're doing with guys at this level, people ask me this all the time, like questions about how different is it from level to level, and guys at this Olympia level, and you're also working with guys at the USA level, and I know you've helped a million people at the state level and all that stuff. How do you treat that? Because I think I know the answer, but I just want people to hear you say it.
To me, it's all the same. Everything is identical, okay? It doesn't matter if you are a novice bodybuilder or if you are getting ready for the Olympia. In my eyes, everything is the same. You're gonna suffer at a certain level. Now, some of these guys have went through the process, and their suffering is a different level than a novice person's suffering. But in the novice person's mind, they are suffering just as hard as the Olympia guy because they've never went through that process. And I don't care who you are. It always gets harder, like always. And that's one of the things I think that's unique about, this sport. And you guys know, I mean, you guys have both competed at the highest level, obviously. And if anybody, thinks like it gets fucking easier, it doesn't. Like I tell everybody, like, dude, keeps getting harder. Like everything just keeps getting harder. You've got to train heavier. You got to just keep pushing harder and harder. And then at the same time, obviously, we just keep getting older, so that fucking makes everything even worse. And I tell everybody, I was like, there's a point I think where it is a little easier when you're younger and you can get away with a few little things like your metabolism. If you have that type of metabolism, is cranked. Especially if you're young, like everything is firing at 100%. Your joints are basically perfect. Like you're not dealing with nagging injuries. You're not having to work through all of this kind of carnage or whatever that has happened from
carnage. Exactly.
your knees still have the new car smell.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, everything is a little easier. I tell everybody, like, dude, it's never gonna, it's never gonna get easy. Like, it's always gonna get hard. And I said, you're gonna mentally push yourself, and the next time you have went through that, but you're gonna push yourself just to that next level, because at the end of the day, bodybuilding is always about taking a step forward, a little bit more, a little bit step forward, a step forward. I don't care what anybody thinks. Like, most of these people that don't ever make progress, and they're like, oh, I'm happy with where I'm at. It's bullshit. You're just stuck with where you're at. Nobody's ever satisfied with where they're at. Nobody, in my opinion. Exactly. They always. And so mentally, always thinking like, well, if I, a little bit better. It's the mindset of a bodybuilder, and it doesn't matter like at what level. I mean, you could be talking about a bikini girl, it's all the same level. Like they're all trying to push themselves to the next level. So it never gets easier. It in reality, it probably gets harder, like I said, because you just keep having to deal with more and more and more.
I compare it to like, do you have the peak? We call it like peak to peak thinking, Chad, where when you, like you said, when you're a novice and you do it the first time, it's brutal. Then the second time, when you get to that same point again, you've already done it. So you're like, you know what? I think I can push this a little further. And then you keep doing that down the line. And next thing you know, like you said, I found the scariest part of my career was one prep that actually went easier. And I didn't feel as bad. And I was nervous. I'm like, Chris, is everything okay? Like it actually screwed with me in the other direction because I wasn't dying. Right. And he's like, the pictures are fine. I'm like, but I feel okay. What's happening?
Right, right. And I think that, people get to a point like that. And I think, even with Ramy, like I told him, I'm like, listen, nothing is ever going to be harder than what we did. Like I said, you've already went through it. You understand the process now. You understand what, we're going to go through. Not realizing that we were going to, end up with a couple hurdles that we were going to have to hit. And then everything did get a little bit harder, and stuff. And so but I know what you're saying. Like there's points where you get to a certain level and you've kind of pushed through it. And then there's always that, kind of one prep where, you kind of go through the process and you're like, shit, this is way easier than I remember. And the body's clicking and it goes right back, pretty easily to where, you were last time and stuff. And I mean, I think that people always have that. But it was probably the following prep that became hard because you realize like what you had left in the tank. And I think that's where, bodybuilding is so unique because you end up just keep like pushing, to an extent, trying to be better. I mean, that's just the mindset. And I mean, trying to dig deeper and people are always like, like, oh, how in the fuck do you, not peak for a bodybuilding contest? Just quit doing this, quit, doing that, da, 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 da. Most people are pushing so fucking hard. Like they don't realize like, it's not that they're fucking up. It's that they're pushing themselves so hard that they either end up over dieting or over training or overdoing something, that usually ends up, messing things up. I mean, that's, and we've all been there. Like, everybody, I don't care what person it is. We're all like, fuck, if we can get like you already look crazy and we're like, man, if we could just get 5% more out of this shit, like this shit'll be crazy. This'll be crazy.
How was that last few days in Vegas, getting ready for the O, looking back on the year with doubts and the time constraints and all that stuff. And I mean, who's going to be there, what they're capable of, how was that, right down to the prejudging and watching them on stage? How was that weekend for you? And what was on your mind?
Really going that week, like once we got there and stuff, like I was probably calmer, this year, the final week than I was last year. 'Cause last year we were going in, really kind of as, nobody had Ramy winning obviously last year. So I felt like, man, we had like, just so much to prove. This year I went in with a lot of questions answered. And so I kind of knew how his body responded. I mean, obviously we're trying to make up some ground and push for that conditioning and stuff to achieve a certain look that we were trying to achieve. And knowing that, there's some, serious weapons in this lineup that, that are going to make it, tough. But I knew where he was at. I knew with his size and structure and just everything that where he was at, he would be hard to beat, And so I was probably more relaxed this year than definitely I was last year. And even after prejudging, because, I mean, if you look at the prejudging and the guys like, I mean, it was kind of a flip flop, I mean, there was guys that looked good on Friday and guys that looked bad on Friday. And there was guys that looked good on Saturday and guys that looked bad on Saturday. But with where Ramy was, he was pretty consistent, evenly, through both days. And I was pretty confident all the way through.
What did you feel about the rest of the top five?
I thought they were good.
Are you even watching? Like, you know what I mean? Like are you even paying attention to the other guys? Or are you just like lasered on Ramy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lasered on Ramy, but, obviously I wanted to see what Brandon looked like. I wanted to see what Hadi looked like. I wanted to see where they were at. And, I mean, on Friday night, like the minute everybody walked out, I mean, and honestly, like, I mean, there was a lot of hype with Walker. There was, I'd seen pictures of Hunter. I knew Hunter looked good. Like all of these guys, I mean, I'm definitely paying attention to and stuff. But when everybody walked out, and when I saw where everybody was, I knew the battle was going to be between Ramy and Brandon on Friday night. Hadi was way, way flat and small on Friday night, especially if you were there in person. I mean, on Saturday night, I thought Hadi looked fucking great. Like, you look phenomenal. Like, if he'd have looked that way on Friday night, it might have been a much, much closer battle. He would have for sure taken out Brandon. But on Friday night, he was just a shell of what he had been. He was very, very small. In reality, he probably shouldn't have beat Walker or Labrada on Friday night. But I think the judges saved him, knowing that if he showed up like they probably figured he was going to on Saturday, they could keep him where he needed to be. Versus if they would have placed him probably where he deserved to be placed on Friday, they would have never been able to save him. That's my opinion. But I think that, Brandon was full. He lacked some detail and stuff, but he had made some improvements. And I thought, that was the battle on Friday. And then on Saturday, obviously, Hottie, I thought looked fucking unbelievable. And so I thought that was the battle there. But, with the two flip-flopping, I felt Ramy was solid.
Is it a lot different looking backwards? Because this is something because if we had done this interview right after the show, I was like, this is going to be all about this. But now it's a little further. I'm like, is it a lot different? And I was fortunate enough to be at 6 of Ronnie's 8 wins, where minus 2 of them, they were so dominant that it wasn't even a question. How is that for you, like, leading in? Because, I mean, obviously we saw the old Matsuro videos and stuff of in the room, and it's like there was never a chance in your mind or in the other competitor's mind that anybody was beating Ronnie. So how's that for you in comparison?
It's trickier, because, right now, people are close. But I think that, I know where Ramy can go. There's no doubt. And I think, if everything stays on course and Ramy trains, and he's already started training, like he's super motivated right now. Like he went through this whole process here, he got the title, and he, that basically changed him. That proved to him that he was Mr. Olympia and what he is capable of under not perfect circumstances.
Right.
And so, you know what I mean? And so now he's not really second guessing himself. He is very, very confident. And I told him, I said, in a way, this sets us up for a really good, 2022, because I said people they wanted to see something. And I said, they didn't quite see it, but it sets you up to go so much farther now in the next 14 months. And I said, that has to drive you every fucking day. Like every day now, be driven about pushing the boundaries, and I said, people are going to think like, oh, what can he do? Where can he go? And based off of how his body responds, it's endless. And so I think that he still has the potential, to distance himself from the group, size-wise, conditioning-wise, improvements and stuff. Ronnie obviously was a different human being. he had a different, and when you saw Ronnie in comparison to everybody else, it was just lights out. And Ramy's not there yet, but that's not to say that he's not going to have like 03 breakout year, like Ronnie did and slam the door. I think that we have yet to see the best version of Ramy. And I think that we will come close this year, given the mind frame that he is in right now, because he is like extremely, extremely driven. Like, driven beyond what I've seen him during my time with him, like way beyond.
I think that's super exciting because when you look at the history in the last, few decades, when Ronnie found that gear after 2002, we met 2003. When Jay found that gear after 2008, we met 2009, and that's when everybody had their biggest jumps. Because, I remember at the 03 when Ronnie came out, the guy that was sitting behind me, we were like third or fourth row, just started laughing because it was like your brain didn't know what to do. So I would love to experience another one of those with Ramy because, no one expects it at that level,
Exactly. I think that's the key. And I told Ram, I told him, I said, listen, like, we don't know what you're capable of. I said, and we sat down afterwards. I said, you got to realize what you accomplished in a short period of time. Like, what you accomplished in a short period of time is fucking extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Very few people have ever done it. I've seen I've seen Levrone transition quick, and I've seen a few guys, do it very, very quickly. I've seen Flex do it at the 98 Arnold, where he hadn't trained, for quite a while, and then boom, like body transitioned. But very few people were able, to do those types of things. I said, just think what you'll look like really pushing, like as hard as you possibly can all year in the gym, like all year. And I said, the potential is limitless. I mean, it'll be unknown. And I told him, I said, these are the improvements we have to make, and I said, you have to go in with, that just burning in your head every single time you walk in the gym. But you can just tell, like, he wants to go train. He wants to, he was literally like, the minute it's over, like, listen, you need to set up the next phase, and you need to do this, and da 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 da. Like, I need like a regimented diet. Like, I need everything set now. Like, I'm ready to go. Right. I don't want to get course. I don't want to go down. I want to stay on course and push all year. And I'm like,
nice,
done. Yeah.
What I know that your family is number one. I remember you've said that many times. And I'm thoroughly and still enjoying following both your sons on Instagram. And I wanted to just talk about that for a sec, because that's another extension of your abilities to motivate and drive people. But I assume they have a lot of their own drive and motivation because of what they're doing. I'm just looking at Morgan's page right now. He's Raising Mayhem, right? That's Morgan?
Yeah.
Oh, so he's lost your sound. There you go.
Yeah, so my youngest is Morgan, and that's his thing is Raising Mayhem. So he hasn't posted a lot too. He's playing football right now. So football is kind of like outlet, right? That's his like time, and so he doesn't post up a lot of stuff. He's a freshman this year, so ended up starting varsity at middle linebacker and running back. But he primarily has kind of transitioned over to middle linebacker. And I think that's where he's going to go. That's where I thought he was going to go the whole time. Like, he kind of wanted to be a running back. And I think he still will as high school progresses. I think he'll play that role quite a bit, especially as he gets older. But I tried to explain to him, like, listen, man, like, if you take this the whole way, a middle linebacker makes way more money than a running back. I was like, there's just a middle linebacker. And, but it was one of those things where, he went from 8th grade football to varsity football. And so that transition was, like in 8th grade, like, he just dominated everybody. And then next thing you know, like, he's playing varsity football as a freshman at the starting position. And, and so it was one of those things where it kind of took him a few games to kind of transition into it, but he's like settled into middle linebacker really well. And we're actually in the process of moving. And so most people don't know this, but we're at the end of this school year, we're going to move to Las Vegas for at least the next 3 years so he can play ball out there at a school. And so, that'll be interesting. And then my oldest, so it's kind of, he just graduated. So he had always trained too, worked out. And he's actually a little bit taller. He's 6'2".
What's his Instagram? I can't remember.
His is I think it's Dominic_Nicholls. It may be Dominic. Yeah. And so he just, he played football the whole time. And so after football, he'd like getting more into the bodybuilding and started, like his meals are very regimented and dieting wise, it's good for him because he's a finicky eater. Like he's like Morgan's the opposite. Like he can eat anything, like just anything. But Dom is very picky eater. And I'm like, dude, you were literally born to be a bodybuilder. Like you can, I was like, that's the toughest thing. And genetically, like he has like just freaky genetics. He's got that muscle that just sticks off the bone. Over the last 6 months, he's really been kind of like bitten by it, gotten very, very serious, went away from, football style training and went into bodybuilding style training. And so he went to the Olympia with me. And, I think it was the first time that he realized, like, holy shit, this is actually something that I might, be able to do. And so he's, headed down that road. I told him, I'm like, just take it slow, see how, things go over. I said, you're at the age right now, cause you just turned 18. I said, you're at the age right now where everything is going to be, amplified. I was like, your best progress is going to be made right now. I said, just take it kind of slow over the next couple of years. And if everything clicks where you think it should, then, we'll pursue this maybe and see where he wants to go. But his body's responding like his mom's. Like, I mean, it's that.
I always tell people, if you're in that 17, 18-year-old range, I said, you're already on the best cycle of your life.
I told him, I said, let's get real. I mean, he's that age. He's seeing all these people, and, he's at that point where he's asking questions, and he's like, is it capable of doing this without it? And I'm like, listen, man, I said, honestly, the key is to find out if you have the genetics to do it. And I said, let's just see where you're at, here in a few months. And I said, the next 2 years, I said, honestly, you're going to feel like you're taking shit anyway. I said, your testosterone is cranking to the point where I said, you are not going to have to, do anything. And I said, if you can stay regimented in, that range, and I said, get to, your 20, 21 years old, natural, build this base and structure. I said, you have no idea how far ahead of the game you are. And I said, with the genetics that you have, I said, you'll be a mile ahead of everybody. And you just saw the picture of him. I mean, that's 235. So he's 6'2", 235. But I mean, he has a 30-inch waist. Like, everything just, is just extremely exaggerated, like, on his body. Like, he doesn't understand how fucking God gifted he hit the lottery with genetics. I mean, he just doesn't get it yet.
He's got your shoulder width and his mom's waist.
Yeah.
You got to get him sitting down with Hunter for real, because Hunter had the exact same path. Dude, his dad said the same thing. He's like, just fucking train and whatever. And he did for years, just did exactly what he was told. And obviously, I think it worked out okay. I don't know. Teach their own.
Yeah. Talked to Lee. And I went up to him and I talked to him about it. And I said, listen, my son has, been bitten by the bug. And I said, there's not a lot of people I can talk to this about. But I said, obviously, you've went down this road. And so we talked about it. And we had the same kind of vision and same thing. He basically told Hunter the same thing. And so I said, yeah, that makes me at least feel a little bit, better, because the bad thing is nowadays, like, these fucking kids, like, they go to social media and, it's just like they want this shit right now. And I told him, I'm like, bodybuilding is not a fucking sprint. It's just not. And I said, you don't realize that 2 years will disappear in no time. I said, you think like 2 years is a fucking eternity because you want to be there now. But I said, I'm telling you, just stick to the process. Just train and eat. I said, it's the best point. Like, this is going to be the best 2 years of your life, right? I said, because the process that you're going to go through and the like, everything you're going to learn from this will be the most important, like, building blocks of bodybuilding, really. It's these next 2 years that you're, how your body responds and the feeling of the muscle and that connection and all of those types of things. And I said, go through that process. And I said, if you're still there and still hungry and still driven, by the time you're 20, 21 years old, I said, then we start looking at, like, taking things to the next level a little bit. So, and it worked out pretty good for Hunter for sure. Yeah. He progressed pretty good.
How much default, like, unintentional coaching do you wind up doing with your sons? Like, do they ever say, like, oh, I'm not hungry, and you say, like, go eat, or are they kind of on their own? You just give them a meal plan, or like, what's the deal?
I'm pretty strict with him right now because I'm basically trying to instill, because for the last, basically all of his life, he's basically kind of eaten when he wanted to. And, everything's been geared kind of around football. So,
Right.
you wanted like adding, so, he was 255 pounds, playing football because he played nose guard. So, he was a little bit heavier and, just obviously softer and ate junk food and ate a little bit clean, but, kind of a little bit junkier and space things out and stuff. Now he's, basically what I'm trying to do is instill like how important like everything is, whether it be the food and the timing and, the types of food you're eating and when you're eating them. We're doing a lot of like training stuff right now, really connecting the muscle to the, the mind. So like, when we're doing things, I'm touching like, and I've done that with Kim a lot too, but we're putting pressure points on the muscle that he's training to engage that mind connection instantly, to just, and he's connected, like he's hypersensitive anyway. So like that connection is like just over exaggerated on him. So we're doing a lot of that, but I'm like the same as with Kim. I'm, like if a certain time goes by and I know he's supposed to be eating and he's not in the kitchen, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? It's time to eat. And he's like, I'm getting at it. I'm getting at it. I'm like, listen, man, there's no, like, I said, if you miss each meal by 30 minutes, you've missed a fucking meal. I said, you can't do it. It's got to be like just perfect, and so he's starting to see like the importance of, how everything goes and, like, as far as like, supplementation, as far as the branch chains and like all of this types of stuff, we have certain times to take it, before training and after training and all these types of things. And, trying to stay on him because those are things he never has ever done, ever. And, is everything taken care of? He's like, yes, everything's taken care of, and so it's kind of learning that process, but I'm being over, like strict with him, trying to just build everything, explaining everything as far as the training side of it, because what I don't want him to do is go through this process like a lot of people do and then, come out 3 years later and not know anything that they've done because they've just kind of went through the process and not learned. Mm-hmm. So everything we're doing, I'm like, do you know why we're doing this? This is why we're doing this. And this is why we're doing this. And I'm trying to explain every, like process that we go through, just to, instill. And it's funny because I can see now, like, like at the beginning, I didn't think he, because kids are kids. Like they're still like, I'm still fucking dad. So kind of got this process like, yes, fuck dad, I get it type of thing. But then all of a sudden you'll see him talking to his buddies in the gym and he'll be like, oh, no, you got to do this. And you should be doing this. And I'm like, okay. So the shit is actually sinking in a little bit. So we're good.
That's cool. Welcome to our channel, new sponsor for our Canadian followers, supplementsource.ca. Known for the best prices, this online supplement retailer has been around since '95, offering blowouts on top name supplements that are overstocked, short dated, or have gone through a label change. Plus, you can get great prices on all their normally stocked supplements as well. They have free shipping over $99 and great discounts on bulk orders. Guys, if you want to support our programming and you're in Canada, you can do so by shopping with our new sponsor, supplementsource.ca. Oh, and while you're up there in Canada, have a butter tart today. It's okay. You deserve it. In fact, it's part of your diet. I said so. I'm a coach.
I got a good question that I got sent to me by a friend of mine when he found out you were coming on. He said, ask Chad if there's anything that he does with athletes now that he didn't used to do, like say in the 90s, or anything that he used to do with athletes that he doesn't do anymore. Like any sort of like transformative things that you do as a bodybuilding coach that you adopted or discarded.
So here's the thing. I think that there's a couple things that has happened and it kind of comes and goes. So I think at the beginning stages, especially when I was a little bit younger, before I had kids, I was less patient. Okay. So I would go through the process, and if anything didn't like go exactly how I wanted it, I was like, okay, listen, this is not how the fuck we're supposed to be doing things. Okay, I put the shit on paper, and this is what we do. Stop fucking up, like, right? Don't stop doing this stupid shit. Da 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 type of thing. So I was very like to the point, straightforward a little bit. Then I had kids, so then I became more patient, and then so I kind of went through this kind of phase, and I kind of call it my like pussy phase, where I was kind of like fucking way more like understanding, and then I was trying to like, all right, now, why are you guys doing this? Okay, I'm trying to talk them through this process, right? Like, okay, so we can't be doing that. And I had to kind of get to da 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 da. So I'm kind of like working my way through it. Now that my kids are older, I'm back to like, listen, quit fucking around and let's go back. So, I went through this whole phase, I think, where the kids kind of, made me way more understanding because they were little, and so I was kind of like in this process, where I was like, I think too understanding, and I was trying to like
overcorrected.
Lead them to the path, and now I'm kind of back to the point where it's like, listen, I fucking told you what to do. Quit fucking around and let's get this shit done. Kind of like the way
right.
I kids now. Other than that, man, I think the sport, it always progresses, and I think that anybody that thinks that they fucking know everything is an idiot. Like, I don't care who they are. Like, if they think their way is the only way, or that they know everything, they're the fucking idiot in the room. That's for sure. Like, you have to be open to continuously learning, continuously progressing, moving forward. Things that, what I'm doing now will probably, to an extent, be similar to what I'm doing 2 years from now. But I would like to think that 2 years from now, I'm going to be at least smarter and understand things a little bit better than I do now. And so some of that process will change a little bit. I'll understand certain things more, whether it be with training, whether it be with nutrition, whether it be with everything. I think that you, as an athlete, as a nutritionist, that it doesn't matter, as a trainer, I think that you have to, be open to, saying like you don't understand everything perfect. Your way is not always the exact way. I think the one thing that I've and I've always said this, the one thing that I've been successful with is being able to adapt to the athlete. Like, I've never tried to adapt the athlete to me. Like, I've never been like, listen, this is my diet method, and whatever it may be, like low carb or keto or whatever, like this is the way I do things, so you have to do it this way, and this is the way I want my athletes to train, so you have to do it this way. Like, anybody that does that, I think, has already lost the battle, because everybody is different. I think the way the person's body is will basically dictate how they should get ready for a show, and I think that's the one thing that's made me at least successful and have longevity within this, industry, is because I never try to adapt the athlete to me. I always try to adapt to the athlete and find the best way to get from point A to point B.
I got something to ask, to throw in here, kind of tying in. So
yeah.
What would be the like one difference you can think of in actually working with an athlete for the 2021 Olympia versus, say, 15 years ago?
Like a diet strategy, you mean?
Well, I'm just thinking, the way that things have evolved. I think about like the way that guys used to look in Ronnie's day, and everybody was just like pushing for absolute mass. Everybody got so freaking big. And then nowadays they're kind of talking about like, we got to also keep the waist in control. That's like such a big difference than it was before. So I guess I'm almost wondering, like, the pressure on you as a coach, to get somebody to look the way they need to be. What are the things that are different now than they had been in the past?
I think that if there's anything, and I mean, it's a small thing, but I think the one key that I try to become right now is, especially with the diet, is I try to become as efficient as possible, so that, before I might have been like, hey, listen, we'll keep the protein here, and it may be a little bit high, but I know that we're basically where we need to be. The body's responding well, this and that, da 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 da. Now I find myself being like a little bit more precise. So I want everything to be as efficient as possible. So instead of saying like, 10 grams, of whatever chicken or this and that, maybe a little bit on the high side, but it's working, so we're going to just stay there type of thing. I may be like, listen, man, like when it comes to chicken, we need this. And when it comes to fish, we need this. And when it comes to steak, we need this. And we're all in those very efficient ranges. So the numbers may be a little bit less, you know, and the calorie intake may be a little bit less, where in the past I may have kind of followed like a little bit more of a, you know, baseline, macro type of, you know, thing where everything was, you know, maybe probably either at a deficit or, you know, at a surplus, but it was always in kind of a, you know, little bit of a tilt, balancing act type of thing, where now I'm trying to make sure that everything is as exact as possible, as efficient as possible, making sure that, again, because these guys have gotten bigger. People keep always, you know, trying to say like, you know, this era and this era and this era. And I mean, minus Ronnie, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's been some freaks out there and stuff, but the guys are getting bigger. And with size, the food amounts continue to rise. I don't care what anybody says. It takes more food to maintain where these athletes are heading. And because of that, I think that I've had to basically refine that, because if you just kept going up the process, you're eating so much food that you just can't get it done. Like, it's just, you're going to blow out the stomach. You're just never going to be able to do it. Like, you're just never going to. And so I think that's the one thing that I've probably changed is, like, I'm always trying to become as efficient as possible with the diet so that the food is, for your specific thing, perfect. Like, not too much, not too less, just ideal. That's probably the one thing that I'm probably more dialed into right now than anything. Where before, if I was a couple ounces over or whatever, I didn't worry about it too much. I would be like, listen, we're making forward progress. It's a couple ounces. I don't need to worry about it, and it's what's working. But now I'm like, hey, listen, do we need those 2 ounces in there, type of thing?
Right. Yeah. How do you feel about the other divisions? Just as a fan, like when you watch the classic division and when you watch the 212, you've won, all these a huge Olympia titles with these massive bodies, and now you're seeing this other type of division. And how do you see it? I mean, we had a changing of the guard this year in the 212, and Bumstead retained his title in classic. Do you even have time to pay attention to any of that stuff when you're at the O?
I love those classes. I like a lot of them. I was always a fan of fitness. I trained Mary Yaki for the Fitness Olympia. And then even Kim done, fitness after bodybuilding. So I was always a big fan of that. I know how hard that sport is, because these athletes have to train and diet and then do like dance and gymnastics. And like, it's, in my opinion, one of the hardest sports to do. It's just brutal, so I've always been a big fan of, the fitness. But, with the classic, I like the classic. I like the 212, I like the fact that some of these 212 guys, are basically, filling out their frames now to the point where they're basically open bodybuilders. They're not like restricting down, like you can tell, like they're moving. And same with classic, like you're seeing guys that hit classic. They used it as a stepping stone. They filled out that structure, that skeletal structure. They knew that basically they had two choices. They were basically going to have to limit what they did, or they're going to have to move to the next class. And that's what I think the classes are for. That's what I love about the classes. I think it gives people an option. If they don't want to be big, they can do these other classes. But it also gives the athlete a stepping, stone, that they don't have to just basically go until they become an open bodybuilder. They can go into classic and then progress from classic to maybe 212 or depending on their height, go from, classic to the open. Same with 212. I've always said, like, listen, at the end of the day, it's basically how much muscle you hold on your skeletal structure. And when people was talking about Clarita, doing the open, they're like, fuck, he's going to get destroyed. I go, listen, I said, everybody thinks like you got to be 300 pounds to be a mass monster. I go, who the fuck has had as much mass built on his structure as this kid? Like, I don't care if he's 5'1" or 2 or whatever he is. He has as much muscle on his skeletal structure as any bodybuilder ever. Like, he is the epitome of a mass monster. I said, just 5'2". I said, he's going to be a problem in the open class. I said, I'm telling you, because it's the same fucking judging criteria across the board. Bodybuilding is bodybuilding. And sure as shit, he ended up winning. And I went to the gym, and these guys are like, "Dude, how did you think? Why did you think he was going to win?" I go, "Dude, a bodybuilding contest is a bodybuilding contest. Like, that's it. Like, dude, if you're big, in shape, like structurally good, like I don't care how tall you are, you're gonna do well, And so I think that's the cool thing about like some of these guys. I mean, you've seen a couple 212 guys like really jump up and stand out. And I mean, most people don't. I mean, look back. I mean, Hottie is kicking ass at the Olympia, and he started at 212. It's like he was a 212 guy. Here he is. In the last couple of years at the top. I mean, you got Flex Lewis who's going to be coming in next year. We know he's going to be somewhere in the mix. Like, I think it's cool because those classes are basically set in motion for stepping stones to go to that next level if that's what you do. But even with the women's classes, like, again, like I'm a fan of the fitness because I think that class is so tough. I think most people don't realize just how tough that class is. Figure, bikini, like the wellness. Like personally, I like the wellness because I like the bigger legs, the more athletic legs. But I'm not like at this point, I'm not like really that much into like the big, upper bodies on women. And the women's bodybuilding, in my opinion, has went like way fucking out of control. Like it's way over on the dark side now, and so it's not something that really appeals to me that much, which is weird for me to say because Kim came from women's bodybuilding, right. But she was. Most people thought she was big at the time. I mean, she won, the first Olympia at 147 pounds and never competed over 157 pounds. Most of the figure girls weigh that now. They just, most people don't realize how far the women's bodybuilding has went. Like most of these girls are 200 pounds. Like they're gigantic, women. Like they don't realize how big. And for me, it's just, that's just not the look that I like anymore. I like, like the wellness with the big legs, big athletic legs, but that smaller waist and, smaller upper body and stuff. So I think it gives everybody a very unique, look and whatever direction they want to go.
How do you handle, and I don't know how much you're doing this now, but it sounds like you're going to again, or how would you handle some of these newer athletes that get into bodybuilding, and I bring it up because I just went to a show 2 weeks ago, and I was stunned at how many guys confuse classic bodybuilding with small bodybuilding. So guys who are structurally built like me that are like, I'm gonna do classic because I need to grow, and I'm like, but you look like a refrigerator. You just no, be a small normal bodybuilder and work your way up. I mean, how do you look at that?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I've had a bunch of guys do that, and I mean, where I've had this is I've had guys who are just getting started, who think because they're not filled out, they're not structurally there yet. Hey, I'm not quite there yet, so I'm going to jump into classic, and do classic first, and then by the here in a few years when I get filled back out, then I'll do open. And I'm like, listen, that's not what classic is. I'm like, you're literally an open bodybuilder. Like you're structurally an open bodybuilder. And I'm like, what do you want to do? You want to be a smaller, decent, open bodybuilder, or do you want to be a guy that doesn't fit the criteria in, a division? And that's how I'm usually pretty open about, what I think that should be. And vice versa. Like I've got some guys that are, open bodybuilders that I'm like, listen, man, structurally, like you should be a classic guy. Like you should be, like, no, I'm an open bodybuilder. And I'm like, no, man, you're a classic guy. Trust me on this. So it's, either or, like you see these guys that, want to go classic, but they're really not. But then you got guys who are stuck in the open, mind frame thinking like, listen, I gotta be an open bodybuilder. I can't go, the classic route. And I'm like, I said, listen, at the end of the day, a pro card is a pro card. I said, true. If you get it in classic and then spend the next 3 years becoming an open bodybuilder, then do it. But if you decide that I said, once you get into classic, I said, you may like that division, so I'm pretty open about everything. And the other thing, I'm always open about structurally where people are, genetic are like, I'll tell them straightforward, like, listen, I don't think you have to be a genetic god to become a great bodybuilder, but you have to be able to work through certain things. You have to be able to, get to a certain point to where, you can overcome, limitations. And I said, that's going to be tough. I said, you got to realize there's genetically gifted athletes that never make it to become a pro. But I said, if you have great work ethic, you will eventually get there. Like, I'm telling you, you will eventually get there. I'll take somebody with hard work over genetics every day, but I think that's the key, is being honest with, somebody as far as, where their potential is. I think that's the problem now, is that you have so many, like influencers that are on, online doing all this shit basically for clicks and doing all this nonsense, all this craziness. And, it just kind of steers people in like all of these weird directions. So sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's bad.
No, I agree. I'm glad you said that, because I'm always blown away by the fact that a lot of people have no self-awareness, and then sadly they don't have anyone around them that's straight up, that'll just look at them and go, no. Yeah.
Or they're the main guy in the gym, so everybody just basically tells them what they want to hear, type of thing. And it doesn't, my opinion is it doesn't really do anybody, any good by telling them that. I think, and I've seen so many guys, vice versa. I've seen a ton of guys that, will compete in, classic that should never compete in classic, and vice versa in the open too. And that's what's nice about, the NPC. I tell everybody, I'm like, listen, at the NPC level, before I said, do both, see where you fall.
Right.
I said, do both of them at the beginning, see where you fall. I said, if you think you're classic and you do well in classic, then stay in classic. But I said, if you go to classic and you don't do well, but you happen to do well in the open bodybuilding, you have your answer, And I said, that's the nice thing about, where the NPC is right now. You can cross over the same, like I have a ton of guys that, and I've just talked to a guy, he wants to be classic so bad, but genetically, he would be just an unbelievable physique guy. And I'm like, listen, man, like you could potentially turn pro in physique. And like, he was so offended by the fact, and he's like, but I train legs and do this kind of shit and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, listen, I get that. Like, if you think that there's not physique guys that have phenomenal legs, you're mistaken. I'm just saying your, like skeletal structure is so tiny. And the way you look, I said, you look like a friggin' physique guy right now. I was like, you're like there. And I was like, why, why spend the next X amount of years trying to get to something that may not happen when physique wise, you're already there, and they're so like, but I've got to pose, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and it's crazy. It's same with women. Like I have a ton of women that are, wanting to do figure. And I'm like, listen, you're way too damn big for figure, like way too big. And they literally, for whatever reason, do not want to take those heels off. Like they want to keep those heels on under any, like no matter what the circumstances is, they can't take heels off. They think like the minute they do that, they're going to lose their femininity. And I'm like, listen, you're exactly what we need in women's physique. Like, you do have a feminine look, like have the look that you don't realize, like you could be a superstar, in that division. But I said in figure, you're going to be too big, you're just way too damn big, and so it's, for whatever reason, I think it's maybe where they started and then they just don't want to come out of the class or, vice versa. But I don't know. It's crazy sometimes.
You've got this track record, with Kim obviously winning all those Olympias. Did she win 6?
She won 4.
She won 4. Okay, so won 4. Ronnie won 8. And now you're, I'm going to say you're starting to tear now. Starting another tear now.
Yeah.
So do you see yourself like, let's say Ramy wins a bunch of Olympias, and then in the 2030s, Chad pops up again with another dude who starts winning. Like, how long are you going to do this? How long do you see yourself training Mr. Olympia, like Olympia champions, constantly coming back with someone that's devastating like this? And, you can't get the name Chad Nicholls out of the top of the game,
I think, it depends on like how long I'm having fun doing it. Like I said that from the get go. I mean, I went through a phase where I just, I didn't train a lot of people for a while because I didn't like want to miss my kids growing up. And so like I kind of just took on a few like, friends, people that I had dealt with for a while, but I didn't take on like full teams like I, do now. And because I didn't want to miss that. I didn't want to look back and go, fuck, like where did the time go? Like I missed all of that. And then once my kids got to a point where they, became more interested in training, like that drive really came back. And then the motivation just kept, kind of coming back and coming back. So right now, I'm as motivated as I've ever been, as far as like, training and stuff. To the point, like I said, we're like literally getting ready to move to Las Vegas next year just to be more involved in an area with that. I mean, we had a couple options as far as my son playing football. I mean, we had about 4 different schools that, basically we could have taken him to, a couple in Florida. There was one in Georgia. Like there was several. And then there was one in Las Vegas that kind of popped up. And when we're looking at all of the scenarios of where, like, as far as, the family would, fit in, obviously, right now Las Vegas is just fucking booming, bodybuilding wise. And so, like for the next 3 years, we're going to keep our house here in Missouri and kind of go back and forth a little bit, but like we're going to be there, for at least the next 3 years. And so I think that in itself is going to push me even more. Like I'm going to be around a lot more. I think it'll be good for my oldest son. Well, it'll be good for both of my sons, really, but I mean, it'll be good for Dom as far as like, bodybuilding wise and being around a lot of just, because right now, I mean, he's literally one of the biggest guys, in the gym, and like he can't be that. Like he has to be, in an environment that he is a little dog in a big.
You need to find a bigger fish tank.
Yeah, and so I told him good for him. It'll be good for me. I said it'll be good for everybody. Good for Kim. Being around that type of environment again. So it's going to be it'll be interesting. The thing is if Dom continues to progress like I think he will, obviously I will stay in that, in that as long as he is doing that and as long as I'm, motivated. So I would love to be able to let Ramy, reign supreme and then, turn it over to my son. That would be the ultimate. That would be the ultimate goal.
I've only got one more question for you, unless these guys got one. But last time you were on the show, I asked you if the next Mr. Olympia was on stage yet, and you said no. After seeing this year's lineup and knowing what you know about Ramy, and you've got 2 in the bag, and who knows how long his run is going to be, is your answer still no?
So I think that I think the sport has progressed tremendously. I think that we have some young guys that are coming up that are going to battle in the mix of the top group for a while. I think the Hunter Labradas and the Nick Walkers, and we have the Ian and several guys. We have several guys that are going to be staples in this group. And I mean, even Brandon. I mean, Brandon has a few more years, but he is definitely coming toward the end. It's not like he's he's not old. I mean, I think he's 39 or something like that. But I mean, once you get into those ages, you got to be looking at an exit strategy. Obviously. So I think that there's a group in that mix that's going to be there for a little bit. I think the next dominant guy, the next Ronnie, or the next Ramy has not stepped. Phil, I think that guy has not stepped on stage yet. I think we'll see him soon. I think he's out there. I don't think he's stepped on stage yet. That's my opinion. And I think that in the next 5 years, we're going to see a guy that, or even sooner, I think in the next 3 years, we're going to see a guy that people are going to be like, fuck, that's the guy. Like, that's definitely the guy. And it'll be a guy that just possesses, everything that everybody's looking for. That's my opinion. I think it's going to be something very unique, that everybody wants. I think it'll be a structural freak, like mass with structure. I think we're going to see that guy in the next 3 to 4 years, my opinion.
I love that vision because just recently, I don't know if you saw it, Chad, but Jay Cutler put up a picture of himself at 23. And I wanted to start forwarding it to people because I was like, unless you look like this 5 years into training, because remember, he just started lifting at 18, not even, just 5 years into training, do not quit your day job. Because people don't realize that guys like that are born. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Dude, the minute I saw that picture, I literally saw that picture. I pulled it up on my phone. I walked back to my son's room and I said, listen, look at this picture. Let this fucking picture burn into your head. I said, because you're capable of this. There's no doubt. But I said, like, you don't realize like how he trained and how dedicated he was. I said, you should go back and watch Jay Cutler and all these guys. I said, if this is, what you want to do, like young guys just don't understand what it is. Like right now, they're so fucking, concerned about, taking that fucking picture or doing some dumbass TikTok, video or all of this stuff. And I get that. Like, man, I get the social media is a driving force right now because financially it is a very smart move. It will allow a lot of young athletes that do it right. And there's very few that do it right. But I think, that if they do it right, they can make a living off of social media and at the same time be able to fund, bodybuilding. So they wouldn't have to rely on, contracts and all of these kinds of things. They would obviously come, but they wouldn't have to. Like they would be making the money from, social media. And I think the benefit is there for somebody. But again, like it's going to take hard work. It's going to take like, when you look at that picture, and I know exactly what you're saying, like when I saw that picture, I'm like, this is a kid who obviously had genetic legs. But when you saw that picture, you realized that in a very short period of time, this kid busted his ass because there ain't no way his legs look like that without hard work. Like his were like already unbelievable at 23 years old, like just unbelievable. And, that's what I think is missing right now. Like you're seeing these guys who think they're like, look, everybody thinks they train hard. Like everybody, they go into the gym, they go through the process, they think they train hard. They think that, all of this kind of stuff. I think to get to that level, it's going to, and I mean, the sport has progressed, you know what I mean? Like it's a much bigger, aggressive sport right now. And I mean, you have guys, that are, at the next level. But I will say, if you look back like a few years ago, I mean, you could hand pick a few guys that went into the gym and you could tell loved training. Like they loved the grind about training. And the rest of the guys, you were kind of like, fuck, man, they're just, they're not getting it done. I will say like the group that's emerging right now are hard training guys, like the Nick Walkers, Labradas, and you got to think that Labrada, that was instilled in him from day one, whether he wants to believe it or not. Like he grew up with his father. He saw what his father, how his father trained and all the things that he did, and that was instilled in him from a very young age, and it carried over into what he is as a man now. So I mean, these guys are getting it done. I mean, they're fucking grinding in the gym. I mean, that's the one thing that I will say right now is that you can't say that the sport is lazy right now because the fucking guys are getting it done, so.
For sure. Awesome.
At least it's refreshing. You know what I mean? It's refreshing.
Chad, we appreciate your time so much. Very generous. You haven't done any, I don't even think have you done any interviews since the Olympia?
First one. I've had like a bunch of I had a bunch to kind of get them done, and then I kind of ghosted everybody. I guess I was just kind of burnt, wow. And I was just kind of And so then, like, when I reached out to you, I'm like, all right, man, I'm ready to go. Like, whatever you guys want to do, let's get it done. So I've got a couple more.
Well, we appreciate it.
And, and then I'll probably. No.
Thanks so much for your time. I had a bunch of messages that were all saying, like, ask Chad why we haven't seen, like, why did we see no videos of Ramy this year? Why didn't we see off-season pictures? Why didn't we see? And so you answered all of those right off the bat. There was nothing to see.
There was a ton of people that's like, like I kept getting these emails, and it's like, what's going on with Ramy? He's not representing the sport. He's like, why is there no training? Nowhere. And I'm like, we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done, but it's, unfortunately life happens too sometimes, and those are things that you just have to deal with. They're just circumstances that are unexpected. And, I hate to say it, life gets in the way sometimes. You just got to fucking get it done. And I think that in the end, Ramy's a better person for it because, at the end of this, we had a sit down talk. Like I said, he proved to himself that, really under the worst circumstances, he was able to still get it done. He was able to find something in himself, and he was able to get it done under the worst circumstances. Now we're under the best circumstances. He's happy.
Right.
He is motivated. He is energized. Like, he's driven. We have, the mindset that we wanted, and we're going to get something different this year. Like, he's already like at him right now. Like, he just guest posed. He fucking still looks unbelievable. And I'm like, dude, like, eat something, enjoy something, And he's like, I'm enjoying being Mr. Olympia. Just give me a regimented diet. I'll just stay on it. And I'm cool. And so like everything we're doing right now is structured. Like refeeds, like everything, and I'm like, listen, enjoy yourself a little bit. But I said, but if you look at those guest appearances, like his fucking glutes are still cross-strided. Like he's still in shape, like, X amount of weeks after. Where most people, I can tell you, wouldn't even be close. Like, no way would they be, looking like that. And I told him, I was like, I can just tell, like, where he's at right now is a really good spot. Like, it's a really good place. And I saw this with Ronnie, too. Ronnie was a little different, but, when Ronnie got beat by Gunther, the change in Ronnie that we saw was like, okay, you want to fucking challenge me? Okay, game on. Let's fucking go. Let's go. And he was just a machine that year. Like, his mindset was, listen, you think you're going to take this shit from me? I'm going to beat and destroy everybody in my way. And that's kind of the mindset in a different way. But Ramy is like, listen, I'm going to go out and I'm going to show you just how fucking good I am. And so the similarities are very similar. Different circumstances, but very similar outcomes.
Nice.
Well, we are looking forward to very similar years of progression. Yeah. I will never forget. I will never forget running into you at the prejudging at the Mandalay Bay in the hallway, and I said, "How's Ronnie looking?" Because I was on my way to my seat, and you looked at me and you said, "He's 290 this morning. It's all over." And yeah, you remember that, Chad?
I remember it. I remember. Yeah, you came up to me. You're like, "What do you think?" I go, "It's fucking game over." I said, "It's over." I said,
"It's over. It's over." I just left his room. It's over. And I was like, okay. I went back to my seat and I just told everyone I was with, it's over. So, okay, Chad, thanks again, man. You're fantastic for coming on and giving us your time. Oh,
what I was going to say is one of the bodybuilding moments that I'll never forget was as a prep coach, like you can leave the room, right? And you guys know this, as competing and stuff, you can look one way in the room, right? And then, you're sure, how are you going to look on stage because the lighting changes and all this shit, right? And then you're dealing with stress and all this kind of stuff. But I'll never forget, Ronnie walked out and I thought, okay, he's fucking big. This is good. And then he turned around and I just remember sitting there thinking what the fuck? That moment, Like, I'll never forget when he like turned around, put that leg back, locked them glutes in, and hit that back double bicep shot. And I'm like, fuck, we may we're witnessing fucking something crazy here. Like, we may never see anything like this again. And I didn't even I wasn't even sure. Like, I was so mesmerized by it. Like, I was just sitting there looking at the shit, like, and and I remember Kim was like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Fuck." I go, "This is the craziest shit I've seen in my life." And and she was like, "Is everything okay? You think he's okay?" I'm like, "He looks fucking ridiculous." I was like, I'm just kind of trying to take it in because, like, you think he's going to look a certain way, and then it never kind of is exactly like you think he's going to look. And then all of a sudden he walked out on stage and he looked fucking exactly like I thought he was going to look. And so it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, man. History. Well, let's see history in 2022. Let's see some more history, Chad.
No doubt we're going to see something crazy. I think all the guys are, pushing. Everybody's trying to take it to that next level, and we're in the same boat. So I mean, it's going to be a great year.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening. Thanks, Chad, for coming on, dude. We'll have you again when you got 3 O's under Ramy. So.
Yes. We'll just keep climbing.
Maybe I want to get you and Dennis both on and have a little round table.
Absolutely, man. That would be great. Yeah.
That would.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, man. Say
hi
to
to
the family.
Guys.
Appreciate it, Chad.
I will.
See you soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Chad Nicholls. That was awesome. Chad was like, "Yeah, I got an hour for you," and he gives us like almost 2.
2. Exactly. I was watching the clock.
It's funny. I thought
we're still going.
Yeah, I'm like, I better let him off. So I give him the door, and he's like, "Hey, one more thing." And then we get another great 20 minutes. It was awesome. So, yeah, what'd you think, Scott?
Man, I was just excited to sit back and listen to him. He's somebody that I hadn't met before, but I've listened to him on podcasts since I discovered bodybuilding podcasts. I remember one of my favorite stories of his was, do you guys remember when he was working with Dennis Wolf and Dennis ate the cookies? Do you remember that story? Because he was like, he was like, I remember Chad was like, and he insisted, his wife made these cookies and she had 100 of them. And he was like, insisted that we worked these cookies into the peak. And he was like, don't really want to use the cookies. But then he figured out a way. And then before you know it, all the cookies were gone.
Didn't he say he's like, "Oh no, I was using these cookies on my high carb days."
Is that what it was?
Telling me to have. He was like, "You were telling me to have this, and I used the cookies because they were similar, but I was using them on my high days, so we should be able to work."
Is that what it was? Yeah,
yeah. And I wasn't the story Chad was like, "Well, we could do 3 cookies instead of whatever it was I wanted you to eat."
Yeah. That's what it was.
How Chris throws in muffins or whatever, He's like, "Well, we could use the cookies, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 for the, replacement." Yeah. And then he went to the room to look at them, and there were no cookies at all in the room.
Yeah, they were gone. He ate them all. There was 100 cookies that his wife had brought too. So.
To all of my clients listening, the answer is no. We cannot use the cookies.
Yes, the answer is no. Yeah.
But his telling of that though was absolutely hilarious. I kind of want to go back and find that interview.
Yeah, I remember hearing it before.
I'm just blown away, Scott, that you didn't.
It might have been.
I thought that you started bodybuilding podcast, Scott.
Oh God, you would think, right? No, I started podcasting.
Discovery, and I was like, wait a minute.
I started podcasting because I loved listening to him. I started listening to Dan Solomon and Bob Chick. They had their podcast,
Pro Bodybuilding Weekly.
Yeah, I loved that show.
Bodybuilding Weekly?
Yeah. It might have been on that show actually that Chad was on. I'm not that when he told that story. I can't remember though. Yeah. And then Dennis Wolf came on and told his version. And then I remember there were a bunch of people that were confused, and they're like, "Who's this Jed guy that Dennis was talking about?" And they're like, "No, he was saying Chad," but it came out like Jid Nicholls.
It's a German. Yeah, it's a German accent, Russian accent. Yeah,
German. Jid.
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Dennis is he's his mom and he's Russian technically, but he's German accent, right?
I thought he was German, but I could totally
Well, he's
be
German,
wrong. Yeah.
but I think his parents are Russian, so he's like Russian, like all his relatives are Russian, but he's German, like born in Germany.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's so he's got so he might even have a blended accent. I don't know. You know, if you grow up with Russian parents, but you're German.
But I felt so honored listening to that because, I mean, he's been responsible for prepping so many great bodybuilders. I mean, freaking Ron, like, you know, it's kind of like, as a bodybuilding nerd, I was kind of in awe to get to hear from the prep coach who's been, you know, behind a lot of really crazy physiques.
Yeah, well, he reinvented women's bodybuilding with his wife, and then reinvented men's bodybuilding with Ronnie, and you know, it's just crazy. So, yeah, man, a lot of years at the top. So it's no wonder you keep seeing him show up again. You know,
Exactly.
behind the biggest guy on stage, you know, again. So
You worked with him, right, Ron?
I worked with Chad in 09, and he got me to my heaviest body weight ever. Yeah, like, and the strongest I've ever been too. That was kind of the year I got to my like biggest, you know. So yeah, very, very. It was a lot of fun, man. And Chad always had a story. That was another thing. And you listening to him talk about, you know, paying attention to the mental aspect of his athlete, you know, how he felt like Ramy needed this. And, you know, I sort of think, oh, maybe that's why he spent time like telling me some of those stories because, you know, we were prepping and maybe he thought like, you know, some of those stories would motivate me or something. Cause he told me a lot of great stories about just, you know, being in a hotel room with these guys saying something funny that they took to heart. And next thing you know, they're better, you know, like just those little stories like that. He just had a ton of them, you know, just casual shit. You know, like the famous one that he's told a bunch of times now, but I like when he told it to me, it was the first time I'd ever heard it. But he told me about, you know, when he was sitting with Ronnie after the Olympia, and he was like, "Hey, is there anything you did that I need to know about?" And he said, "We just won our first Olympia, and you know, if there's anything that you did that I need to know about, so I can be aware." And Ronnie looked at him. He's like, "It didn't even cross my mind to do anything that you didn't tell me to do."
Huh.
And he's like, "Oh, okay. So that's exactly what you did." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I didn't have a single grain of rice more than what you told me to do. Like, it didn't even cross my mind." And he was like, "Oh, okay, perfect. We can win a bunch of these." You know? And I just remember hearing that.
Good to know.
Like, oh, yeah. Yeah, you know? So, okay, fellas, I got to run. I'm sure you do too. I love your shirt, by the way, Dusty.
Thank you. I like that it just says "fuck attention" on the screen and nothing else.
That's all I thought it said.
What am I missing? What am I missing? What's below that? There we go.
Oh, earn respect.
Yes.
That's okay too, I guess. Okay. That's okay too, I guess.
It's the anti-social media situation.
Right. And then
Awesome, guys.
Scott's shirt says "Got Tren." What is
No, I wish, right?
Got Doms.
Which comes from never mind.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine. She wears a t-shirt to the gym. It says "Maybe it's the trend." She, you know, she lifts heavier than half the dudes, so you know she's like she wears this ironic shirt that makes me laugh every time. Maybe it's the trend. I
love it that only 10% of the gym knows what that means, and they love it.
Yeah. Okay, have a good one, guys. I'll see you later. Remember, everybody, like, share, subscribe, comment,
ring the bell.
I swear Dusty's like delaying that on purpose, like a little
It's dramatic.
bit, you know?
It's nice. It's good.
I want my moment.
It's like, yes, exactly. And we'll keep it rolling, and we'll be back next week with It's Just Bodybuilding.